We're about to dive into a text that's over 3,000 years old. But hey, don't think of this as some dusty history lesson. Honestly, it's more like an ancient handbook for life, a super practical guide to emotional intelligence that is shockingly relevant today. We're going to unpack Proverbs chapter 15.
And it all kicks off with this. I bet you've heard this line before, right? Even if you had no idea where it came from. It's such a simple, powerful truth about how we interact with each other. And it really sets the stage for everything that follows. It's the perfect way in.
So to really get a grip on these ancient sayings, we've broken them down into 4 key themes. And you're going to see a pattern here, a constant choice between 2 ways of living. We'll look at the power of your words, the huge difference between being wise and being a fool, 2 very different moral paths, and finally, what this text says true happiness is all about.
All right, first up, our words. And this isn't some abstract philosophical idea. This chapter is intensely practical, focusing on the real, tangible impact of how we actually talk to each other every single day.
Here it is, that core contrast in action. It's a straight-up cause and effect. One way of speaking calms things down, the other just pours gasoline on the fire. This isn't just a nice suggestion, it's framed as a fundamental law of how people work.
And the pattern keeps going, but wow, the imagery gets even more intense. Here, your words can literally be a source of life and healing, a tree of life, or they can be a weapon that crushes the spirit. I mean, the stakes could not be higher.
Then the text puts thoughtful speech up against just blurting stuff out. The wise use their words to actually spread knowledge, to build people up. The fool, though, they just gush folly. It's like a broken fire hydrant, uncontrolled, unthinking, and totally useless. It's the difference between speaking with intention versus pure impulse.
So the takeaway from this first part is crystal clear. Your communication is never neutral. Every single word you say has the power to either build something up or tear it down, to heal or to hurt. And the choice, this guide says, is all yours.
But that brings up a deeper question, right? If our words are the output, what about the input? What kind of mindset leads to using words wisely in the first place? And that takes us straight into our next big theme.
So now we get to the mindset behind it all. The guide draws this incredibly sharp line between what it calls wisdom and folly, and it defines them in a very specific, kind of surprising way.
Now pay close attention to how wisdom is defined here. It's not about being the smartest person in the room. Not at all. It's about being open to feedback. The wise person actually listens to correction because they want to understand more, while the fool just rejects any and all guidance.
It really all boils down to your attitude. One person has a heart that's actively looking for knowledge. The other person, called the mocker, doesn't just hate being corrected, they literally avoid anyone who might tell them they're wrong. Ultimately, one path is about pursuing growth, and the other is just about protecting your ego. So it's really important to get what folly means here. It has nothing to do with your IQ. It's not about intelligence. It's a choice. It's an active resistance to learning and a flat-out refusal to be corrected. Okay, so we've established that a wise person is a learner. They're teachable. But how does that connect to what they actually do? What does this ancient guide say about the link between your mindset and your morality?
And that brings us to our third section, the 2 moral paths. Now, the text uses old-school words like righteous and wicked, but you can just think of them as 2 basic ways of living. One that's constructive and builds things up, and one that's destructive and tears things down. And these paths are tied directly to real-world outcomes. One person's house contains great treasure, while the other path literally brings ruin to their income. You see, it's a clear line from your character to your consequences.
When you start pulling all these verses together, you get a pretty clear picture of this destructive path. It's a life of alienation and just bad outcomes. It's a path where your actions, your thoughts, and even your finances lead to ruin and isolation.
On the flip side, the constructive path leads to connection and things actually working out. These are the people who are loved and heard because they act with care. They weigh their answers. Their journey is even described as a highway, clear, smooth, and unobstructed.
So, if you follow this constructive path, what's the ultimate payoff? Well, this leads to our final section, and it's where the text completely redefines what it means to be truly rich.
I mean, just look at this. These 2 lines make a totally radical claim. They're saying it's way better to have a little bit with peace and love than to have a ton of money surrounded by chaos and hate. The true measure of your wealth, according to this, is the quality of your relationships, period.
And we see that this real wealth comes from what's going on inside. A happy heart is like a continual feast. You're always fulfilled. But heartache, that just crushes the spirit. The ultimate source of a good life, it argues, is an inside job.
The message really couldn't be any clearer. The grand prize in life isn't a bigger house or a fatter bank account. According to this ancient guide, the greatest treasures you can possibly have are a peaceful mind and loving relationships.
So after taking this trip through a 3,000-year-old text, what are the big takeaways? What does this all mean for us living our lives right now?
You know, it really all boils down to 4 simple, actionable principles. Number 1, choose your words to build things, not to break them. 2, define wisdom not by what you know, but by your willingness to learn. 3, understand that good actions lead to good results. And 4, value people and inner peace over stuff.
And that leaves us with one last big thought. This ancient guide makes a really bold claim that the things you can't buy, your words, your character, your relationships, are what truly make a life rich. So the question for us, living in a world that often screams the exact opposite, is, do we still believe that's true?